the latest in a long line of Nike daily trainers. How does this stack up to the competition? Meet the Nike Vomero 18. What's up everybody? I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod. You're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today, like I said, we're reviewing the Nike Vomero 18, and I just actually finished out the mileage in this today, so it's a little bit dirty because it was raining out there. Now, if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of the review, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full video, as I put a lot of time and effort into these. And if you've been a viewer for a while, but you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please consider doing so today and turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, which is typically Monday through Friday. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about some disclaimers and disclosures about this shoe, which are that I did receive this shoe free of charge directly from Nike for the purpose of review. That being said, I'm never paid for my reviews. No one gives me talking points, talk tracks, anything along those lines. No one watches the videos beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the shoe. Now the Vomero 18 is one of Nike's daily trainers. It fits within their max cushioning lineup, and it is the Icon base model. What that means is basically it is a max cushion or max cushioning shoe, and so it is supposed to be used for daily training, easy runs, recovery runs, long runs, just daily overall miles for those who like a little bit more cushion underfoot. As such, that's how we're going to be evaluating it today. Now from a price perspective, the shoe comes in at a surprising $150. Typically with max cushion shoes, we'd expect it to come in at like maybe $160, maybe even $165 depending on the brand. So it's nice to see Nike making this a little bit more budget friendly in this year's rendition. From a specs perspective, the shoe comes in at 10.5 ounces, which is a little bit heavy, and that is 298 grams. And then from a stack perspective, you have a whopping 44 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for a 10 millimeter heel to toe drop, which makes it a high drop shoe and is pretty classic for a Nike. Now from a fit perspective, I would say that the toe box is a little bit wider than most Nikes that I'm used to, and so it's nice to see a little bit more room there. The midfoot I do think is a little bit snug, and then you kind of have a standard overall heel. And most importantly in my mind, the shoe fits true to size lengthwise, so I am a 10.5 and I continue to wear a 10.5 in the Vomero 18. Now moving to the upper, you have an engineered mesh, and it is very, very plush. The shoe as a whole, I do think is a little bit warm because you have just a ton of cushioning there in the heel. And if you can see that tongue is also pretty wide and pretty thick. And so that's one of the reasons why I do feel like the shoe feels a little bit narrow in that midfoot, is because the tongue is big, and so when you go and cinch down the shoe, that does kind of wrap and just hug your foot as a whole and keeps you locked into place. So as such, the lockdown is really, really nice in the shoe. You're not going to find yourself sliding around. The tongue is fully gusseted, which is something else that's really, really nice. But all in all, I would think your foot's going to be pretty warm despite having a breathable upper, but you're going to be very, very comfortable for the most part. The lacing system is not my favorite. You kind of just get those like loops or those cables instead of just traditional eyelets. But because the shoe is very, very plush, like I said, and you get that good lockdown, you don't necessarily need anything more there from that lacing system. Really, there's not a ton to say about the upper other than it's comfortable, it's plush, it's gonna be like a pillow on your foot. Now moving to the midsole, this is where it looks kind of funky. Despite having the Zoom X there kind of on this bulb area there in the large chunk of the midsole, it actually has Zoom X just on this top layer right here. And then this kind of middle section as well as this bottom section are all Nike React X. Now, if you're not familiar with those foams, React X is more of their daily training foam. It's a little bit more durable, a little bit firmer overall, yet still fairly soft. And then you do have that Zoom X foam up top, which is actually their racing foam. So it is responsive, it is light, it is bouncy, it tends to be a little bit squishy. Now with 44 millimeters in the heel, you would expect this shoe to be fairly unstable. That being said, you do have like a little bit of sidewall here, and then the shoe as a whole has a fairly wide overall base, a width that is wider than the upper itself. In my opinion, it kind of protrudes out. And so just kind of having these different sections of the midsole make it so that when you step down in the shoe and that foam compresses, it kind of compresses out and gives you a little bit more support. So I do find the shoe to be a fairly stable option despite having a 10 millimeter drop, which is an aggressive drop, and that 44 in the heel. The overall sensation underfoot is going to be soft yet supportive. It's not going to be overly squishy by any means. It's not going to be the softest foam on the market, but it is surprisingly got a decent amount of bounce, and that's likely because of that Zoom X top layer. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not like a fast shoe by any means. I'm not going to be doing repeats or 200s, 400s, let alone mile repeats, anything like that in this shoe. This is very much going to be your easy day, your long run shoe. In fact, I took it out for 13.2 miles today, and the shoe carried me. I will say, like, the responsiveness of it makes it feel like it doesn't weigh quite as much as it does, but 10.5 is heavy, and over time I do feel like the shoe is going to weigh you down a little bit. But as someone who is not a huge fan of max cushion shoes, the fact that I wasn't really annoyed at the weight because of the responsiveness tells you that there's some good things going on here in the midsole, and I think that the shoe is really, really well balanced, which is something that sometimes is hard to do when you have this much foam underfoot. And so between the upper and the midsole, the shoe feels like you're actually locked in. It feels like cohesive as opposed to just being strapped to a big chunk of midsole foam. Now, moving to the upper, you have a high abrasion rubber with a waffle pattern, and then you have that modular or podular kind of sections there in the forefoot to increase some flexibility in that shoe and not create a stiff overall experience. For those of you who don't know, sometimes when you have like a large piece of rubber there on a shoe, especially one that transitions from kind of the forefoot all the way to the heel, that actually can act somewhat like a plate sometimes and make a shoe really, really stiff, even if the foam is responsive or soft. So having those grooves or those different modules or podules right there in that forefoot allows this shoe to move a little bit more freely, and I think that that does help with a little bit of the feel of the shoe. Now, from a traction standpoint, I think that the shoe did really, really well. Again, you have that waffle pattern, which seems to grip the road pretty nice. Again, you have that waffle pattern, which grips the road nicely. You can see there's some dirt in there because I did run in some mud today and the shoe held its own. It didn't get caked onto the shoe, which was really nice. I did have some slipping issues the other day because the road had actually like literally frosted over. So there was a layer of ice on the road. When I was running, I felt fine, but there were a couple of spots where it was really, really slick, where frankly, unless I was wearing spikes, nothing would have made a difference. Like no other road shoe would have done well on that. So I've been fairly impressed with the traction overall of the shoe. I think it's well executed, and it's nice because I think sometimes traction can be an afterthought, but with a daily trainer, you do want solid traction even for when it rains or if you have to, you know, run on the side of the road in a little bit of dirt or mud when there's not like a actual shoulder or a sidewalk to run on. So as far as who's this shoe for, I think that this one's just going to come down to preference. I think if you like max cushion shoes, the weight shouldn't deter you, the stack shouldn't deter you. What's going to deter you then is going to be probably the drop. So it is very much a 10mm heel to toe drop. If you're someone who likes a lower or mid drop, this shoe's not going to be for you. But especially if you're a Nike lover, you like the Pegasus, you want something with a similar drop, you want something that's going to be just for kind of your recovery days, maybe your easy long runs, I think this is an excellent option, excellent complement to that Pegasus line in terms of getting a max cushion shoe on foot for those easy days. If you're looking for a max cushion shoe that has some liveliness in the midsole, you know, some of them are just a little bit dead. They're just meant to, you know, not really propel you forward so much as just support you on those days that the legs are tired, the joints are kind of beat up. For me, if I'm going max cushion, I want something that's not going to feel sluggish. The shoe doesn't feel sluggish to me, right? I think they did a good job of still injecting some speed into the shoe, despite not being built for speed. Now, I am curious what the Vomero Plus is going to look like. I know the Infinity line is being moved into the Vomero line, so my understanding is the Infinity 4 was scrapped and it became the Vomero Plus. I've seen some mock-ups. I've heard that it's actually full Zoom X in the midsole, but pretty high stack like this. So I'm really excited to get that one on foot and try it out. I'm not sure when the release date of it is, but I think that like for me, that sounds more up my alley. But I was talking to some other reviewers and I actually said the fact that I don't hate this shoe tells me that it's a good max cushion shoe, because max cushion is just my least favorite category of shoe. So really, really solid overall job by Nike. Just some final thoughts here. Like I said, I'm not a fan of max cushion shoes. If you've watched my reviews, you know that max cushion shoes tend to do the worst in terms of my personal evaluations, and I try and stay objective and help people understand, right? Like, shoes are going to be different for each individual, so I try and talk about the positives of the shoe or maybe the negatives of a shoe very like objectively and kind of remove my own personal bias against max cushion. But I genuinely enjoyed the shoe. The fact that I decided to take it out for 13 miles today when I could have thrown something a lot more lightweight on. I was heavily thinking about taking out the Zoom Fly 6s. So the fact that I chose this knowing I was going, you know, for like 2 hours today tells me that it's a really solid shoe. I've enjoyed taking it out, putting it to the test. I wish it was a little bit lighter, right? If they could save some weight somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where, because I did like the grip, so I don't necessarily want them to take it away from the outsole. Maybe a little bit less cushion or something in the upper. I'm not 100% sure, but all in all, I do like what they've done here. I think Nike did a good job with the Vomero. Very excited to try the Vomero Plus and very excited to try the Vomero Premium. Now, if you stuck around this far, I sure appreciate you. Take a second, leave a like, leave a comment, tell me what you enjoyed about this review and what I could be changing to make it better for each and every one of you. If you haven't already, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. That way you get notified every time I drop a new video. And as always, we'll leave you with a question, which is your favorite Nike daily trainer? Are you like the Pegasus, the Vomero, the Infinity, or maybe even the Structure? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.